Football and other F words, better late than never, as the people like to say. Had to, update about 13,000 different things. Had to update my browser. Had to update the software, the firmware on the camera before I could go live. No warning that I had to do any of that stuff. So, there you go. Just some
Technology, baby.
technical difficulties. After not being able to see myself yesterday, and it looks like I just froze right there. So this is fantastic. There we go.
Did
We're
freeze.
back here.
There we go.
Whew, this camera. Joined by Stony Keeley at Stony Keeley. Mike is not going to be able to be with us today. He's doing other things. Big important business guy. Got meetings and stuff like that. All that shit. We're doing continuing on with our position by position in-depth review of the Tennessee Titans. Today, we're going to be talking about some tight butts, the tight ends. We got a few interesting little scenarios to toss around to you as the guys are in Cabo. We'll get into a little bit of a, I guess you'd say, I call it art, radio art. And maybe this will shed some light onto what people really hate about certain individuals in radio and stuff, but it's actually pretty fantastic. It's just, to me, it's just perfection. Other than that, Bluegrass Beverages, Hendersonville, Tennessee, been our longtime sponsor here for Football and Other F Words. We love them. They are fantastic. They have everything that you need. They have all kinds of alcohol, booze to get you through whatever you need to get through. Bluegrass Beverages is always there for you, the listener, the viewer, the subscriber. They are there for you. No matter what, Bluegrass Beverages, Hendersonville, Tennessee, whatever it takes. That's not their motto, but that's the motto I'm going to give them.
Man, we're only a couple of months away from Oktoberfest season, and I'm counting down the days until I can make a trip back to Bluegrass Beverages for their Oktoberfest selection. I'm still thinking about it from a year ago, man. It's awesome.
Well, we got a lot to get to today, and we're already running behind schedule. So let's just jump right in talking about the Tennessee Titans and their tight ends. I bet it would not surprise anybody to know that they spent the 31st in cash on their tight ends, 5.54. The only team to spend less on their tight ends in cash in 2024 is the Arizona Cardinals. They get a slight bump in cap space. So they move up from 31st to 30th with 5.6 million tied up in the Tennessee Titans cash cap space that is accredited to tight ends. So not a lot of money spent on tight ends. They have Chig Okonkwo, Josh Wiley, Nick Vannett, Leroy Watson. Oh, sorry. They have Spotrac. Okay, anything about Spotrac real quick. Spotrac has Leroy Watson listed as a tight end, so that one really threw me off. That's what they have him listed at. But today's number one trending player is Will Compton for some reason. So I don't know why Will Compton is trending on Spotrac today.
It's got to be the beer games.
Number one trending player.
Yeah, they had their.
So not Leroy Watson. It's Nick Vannett. Then goes David Martin Robinson, and then Steve Stylianos, which is a great name. But the Tennessee Titans right now, it's mainly Chig and Josh Wiley, with Nick Vannett playing the role of Ringo Starr. Chig and Josh are down at Cabo, and this is art. So when people say, when Braden gets on his rants about Jared Stillman, and they're rants defending Jared Stillman, okay?
Mm-hmm.
He's saying you may not like him, but he's really good at his job. He's a radio guy. He takes the ESPN playbook and runs with it better than anybody. Blah blah blah. That's what Braden said. This is art. What I'm about to read. Okay. Will Levis says he's taken 5 guys out to Cabo, but given his contract, $9 million over 4 years, shouldn't Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins be the ones to take everyone out? Also, shouldn't there be more than 5? And this was for his radio show. That is art. Like, I don't think you can combine such a ridiculous topic and get an hour out of it, because I'm sure that's what he got. I didn't listen to the show. I'm sure he got an hour out of it. But because I have so many questions. how much does Jared think a trip to Cabo costs for 5 people? 6, including Will Levis. Like, how much? And then I guess these take
$1
bring up
million.
many people, right? Because I'm sure they probably rented it. Like, I don't know. And I'm sure there are times where like DeAndre Hopkins is like, no, big dog, I'll pay this lunch or I'll pay this meal. That is what Braden is talking about. Taking such a non-important topic and making a big deal out of it. That's art. It's
Man,
but it's
I'm
art.
with you. And it's a skill set that I don't think people appreciate how difficult it is to just fill time with stuff like that, to be able to just see those little nuggets and to draw that much content out of it. It is, I mean, just chef's kiss, chef's kiss. I saw
Yeah.
it the same as I saw his tweet Monday night after the Vols won the national championship that said, make sure you get a ring for the third base ump from the Florida State game as well. And I just thought this is world-class haterism right there.
It is very funny. That one really is like made me appreciate you have 4 hours to talk. It's June. You have 4 hours of the show to fill. And this is his first show back, by the way, after being off for a week. And this is what one of the topics is. I mean, that's just like, you're right. That is chef's kiss radio right there. But the Tennessee Titans do have Chig Okonkwo and Josh Wiley down at Cabo. It's Will Levis, them two, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, and Tyjae Spears, which is a good combination of players to have because those are the guys that are probably going to see a lot of snaps. The only guy really missing that would provide you something different is Tyler Boyd.
Sure.
And I mean, and really Tyler Boyd doesn't have to really be there, but this is also vacation, right? This is great. Listen, I'm not mad that Will Levis is putting in the work and doing something like this at all. But we have to understand this is vacation for a lot of players, and a lot of players probably have different things going on. We know Treylon Burks is, baby mooning, I guess you could say, with his wife, who's looks like she's about to give birth right out in the fucking beach wherever they're at.
Yeah.
She is ready to spit that baby out. And
worst places to have a baby.
Yeah, there are worse places, but think of the sand, just all that sand everywhere, all those cracks and everything. But it's a lot of people are like, well, a fringe guy, and this ain't even Stillman, but a fringe guy needs to be out. I'd be doing everything I can to get out, to Cabo. And Treylon Burks is about to be an absentee father for going to work. Not like he's ditching his wife and his kid, but he's going to be missing for a while, and she's about to have this kid. So I understand maybe a baby moon may conflict with everything and all that kind of stuff, but you got to keep that same energy for Tyler Boyd and Tony Pollard. At the end of the day, since this is a tight end episode, it is great to see accountant Josh Wiley out there and Chig Okonkwo out there as well. What are your takes on the Cabo trip?
Well, my first question is, when are we going to take football and other F words to Cabo? When are we going to get down there and set the mics up on the beach? I think that's what we need to go cover the practices. But from what I understand,
Will Levis down there. TD took a chance to go down.
How about that? There
you go.
Apparently, Will Levis had the whole thing set up. There's a practice field down there for them to get their work in during the day. They're living it up at night. I mean, this kind of strikes me as the nucleus of your offense. Yeah, sure, taking some time in the offseason to get on the same page, maybe develop a little chemistry, but I feel like this is a really, really big team building, bonding moment for these guys that really, I mean, like you said, you'd love for Tyler Boyd, Tony Pollard to be there as well. But I think this is the key core of your offense and your passing game, taking the opportunity to get on the same page like this. I just love to see it. I love to see it. And I don't know, there's something oddly therapeutic about seeing footballs thrown by the beach. So I'm with it.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I love it. We didn't see Marcus do it enough. I know he's done it once. We know Tannehill during COVID had Jonnu Smith living with him, and Tannehill has done it. We've seen Will Levis do it what is it, BHG or something that's up here? Was Montgomery Bell Academy or something up here with Mason Kinsey and Nick Westbrook-Akine, but this is
why is it Mason Kinsey
like a
down
way
there?
upgraded. Yeah. Oh, is Mason Kinsey down there?
No, why isn't he down there? We need an hour of radio. If you want a roster spot,
what does it say about Will Levis and Mason Kinsey's relationship that he is not down there after being his go-to practice guy?
Yeah.
More after the break. I do love it, and I think there's a lot to take away from this thing, but the most important thing to me is like when we talk about these tight ends is, and this will involve a little bit of wide receiver talk, is how much Josh Wiley and Kyle Phillips remind me of Brock Bowers and Hunter Renfrow in the sense that they're all got problems with their hair. Like, what is going on with these white boys? This quad of white men that they all have the same issues under their helmet. It's just funny that they all play for the same team too. Like, duos do.
I don't know if the training staff can get on that or something. Like maybe their helmets are too tight. It's like ripping their hair out when they put it on. I don't know. Maybe there's something to do with.
Need to go get like injections like Buck does. Buck gets those Botox injections and all that kind of stuff. And
we're just doxing Buck today.
Well, they talk about Lucas made fun of him yesterday on their radio show because he got a chemical pill or something.
Okay. I was about to say, damn. We're just revealing state secrets here on F4 this week.
But I say that Josh Wiley is the least assuming football player that is a 6'8" human being.
I know.
He definitely looks like an insurance salesman.
He's like he has the same body as shirtless Mac Jones smoking a cigar after the game.
Yeah,
he
looks like a guy that's going to be. He's the guy that you pick like second in the YMCA pickup game for basketball because he got the height, but you're kind of like, is he even coordinated? I mean, that's where it's kind of at. 2023 review real quick. Chig Okonkwo had a real down year last year, but he ended up still putting up some good advanced stats, but everybody still clings to the drops. But you can say, I think two things are true. Chig took a step back, but he still has a really high ceiling as a tight end. I don't think we've seen the best from Chig. And Josh Wiley, obviously, his season ended early because of injury. But what we saw was maybe a innate connection already built between him and Will Levis that started at training camp. And all those reps that Will Levis got with the second or third team, all those reps that now are going to turn into first team reps. And sometimes that connection like that really plays a role in 2024 and going forward. Where are you at on Chig's 2023?
Yeah, I do think it was a bit of a step back. I think the drops were a problem. I think you do have to take drop for drop into context, like the reasoning for each one. But I do think he had some particularly bad ones that bounced right off his hands, hit him in the face mask and bounced up into the air. Thinking about what would have been a touchdown in the Tampa Bay game that might have swung the momentum of that game in the Titans' favor. And you're talking about plays that directly impacted wins and losses. So I do think that's a concern, but I still think that these guys complement each other well. And if you look at the things that Chig does, he is kind of a open field in the space, make a play type of tight end. In 2022, Zach, Chig had a yak per reception of 7.9 yards. That dropped to 4.8 yak per reception in 2023, which would have been 12th among tight ends. If he had, now listen, he had considerable amount more catches in 2023, 22 more catches to be exact. If he had been able to manage that 7.9 yak per reception in 2023, it would have been first among tight ends, 16th among all pass catchers. So this is a guy that can make a move in space and pick up extra yards with the speed and athleticism that you look for in a playmaking tight end. That guy is still there. I think you just have to maybe refine the blocking a little bit, or maybe you just kind of use him less in that role. And I think you tap into his electric athleticism a little bit more. And I think he's capable of a rebound. You got to figure out what the drops were about, though. And if it was stuff that's correctable, you got to fix it, and it's on him to do that. I do think it was a step back in 2023, but overall, I think we still saw evidence of the guy we thought he could be as well. And I think that is still what his ceiling is in this offense, is the dynamic playmaker. Maybe even, I've talked a lot about a Deebo Samuel role for this offense. He could potentially fill that role, instead of just trying to line him up in line and having him block every snap that he's out there.
I look at Chig's 2023, and I was looking at some of the advanced stats, like on target catch percentage, how many of his passes were on target, drop rate, and all that kind of stuff. When you EPA per target, points above average per target, points expected per route run, he is still considered by many metrics, even with a down 2023, and maybe this is more of an indictment of tight ends in general, as a top 15 tight end.
Yeah, sure.
These advanced stats. Not talking fantasy, but talking these advanced stats. And so I think, and this I'm kind of a little going out of order on our rundown, but this kind of gets me thinking that have we swung the pendulum too far away from Chig? Like we went really far into Josh Whyle territory, and obviously we were the first ones to recognize that maybe Josh Whyle is making a push for tight end one. It kind of makes sense, but are we really just maybe seeing are we just trying to let me put the Bengals, okay, or this staff? I guess just say this staff. Justin Otten knows what he has in Chig. He was on the staff last year. He's a professional tight ends coach, but even though he was the running back coach last year, he's a well-known tight ends coach. They know what they got in Chig. They didn't really see a lot of Josh Whyle. Okay, this new staff has seen Chig a couple of times in games, and Nick Holtz has obviously seen him twice a year, this and that, and they know what Justin Otten knows as well. Could training or these OTAs, mini camps, these pajama practices, maybe just be them trying to figure out what they have in Josh Whyle because they know what they have in Chig? Sometimes that seems to be the case in these early camps, and maybe I do think this is more of Tony Pollard, Tyjae Spears, tight end 1A, tight end 1B, and both these guys can do both things because, believe it or not, take it for what it's worth, he wasn't a terrible run blocker. And you look at Sports Info Solutions blown block rate. You can look at his PFF grade. He wasn't a terrible run blocker. And you really don't want Chig pass blocking. You want him running passes. Same for really Josh Whyle. You don't really want Josh Whyle having to stay back and pass block. You want him out there running down the seam, catching passes. So at the end of the day, the blocking that matters, he does pretty well. And I kind of think that maybe this whole narrative, I think that this is maybe just trying to figure out what Josh Whyle is while they already know what Chig is. And that's a high-end starting tight end in this league.
Yeah, I mean, it could absolutely be. It could also be that Josh Whyle is ramping up after an injury, like trying to get back into the groove of things. Chig's a little bit more experienced, to your point. I think it could just be, let's get an extended look at Josh Whyle because we kind of know, maybe not necessarily we know what Chig is, but we kind of know how we want to use him in this offense. And so we've really got to figure out what we have in Josh Whyle. To your point, I do think that Chig this narrative does get a little out of control on Twitter where people just say, well, he can't block. I think he just needs a little refinement, needs to build a little more consistency. But I also acknowledge, similarly to how we talked about his 2023 being a bit of a down campaign compared to 2022, I think you can also kind of weigh this factor that when the whole team stinks, like when it's hamstrung by a terrible offensive line, the exponential impact that has on an offense, I think it's easy to kind of get lost in the sauce a little bit and say, well, this person's bad, that person's bad, that person didn't have a good season, this person stinks, we need an upgrade there, we need an upgrade here, all that kind of stuff. But like you said, like these advanced metrics kind of support that Chig is still a factor at the tight end position. And I think the biggest thing that's going to change from him is just the utilization factor. I think there's going to be more creative ways to find him the ball in space. And ultimately, I still think the big beneficiaries of Brian Callahan's arrival in Tennessee are going to be the wide receivers. Don't want to get too carried away here, like, oh, Chig's going to go off in this offense. But I do think that it could be more of this staff just being honed in on what Chig does well and saying we're going to lean into that. I at least think that's a possibility. There's part of me that still thinks that this is closer to an open competition, if you will, for tight end one, that they are just getting an extended look at Josh Wiley and they might like him and think he has a more well-rounded game.
It'll be interesting to see because I look at it and I wonder, isn't Chig talent-wise and really what we've seen still in contention for at any point in time being one of the 5 best players this offense has to catch the ball? I mean, you would put Tyler Boyd, you would put D-Hop and Calvin Ridley, but really, I mean, after them 3, I would put Chig number 4. And look, Tyjae Spears, he's a running back. I get it. He's electric when the ball gets to sand. Same with Tony Pollard. But really, when you're talking about these pass catchers that are known pass catching commodities, I mean, he's number 4, right? I mean, because we've seen enough over 2 seasons to be comfortable with, okay, and maybe this is a bad thing. You can also look at this in a negative way that, man, he's the 4th best guy, and it's not another wide receiver. Or you can look at it as like, okay, he's the 4th best guy for a reason. He's the 4th best guy because we have seen him be an explosive down the field threat. You know, we have seen him be a yak guy. He makes big plays. We've seen him be reliable. We've seen him be unreliable. But at the end of the day, I'm pretty comfortable slotting him in as the 4th best pass catcher out of the wide receiver and tight end rooms. And I don't think that's a crazy take.
No, I don't either. And the differentiator I would make between Chig and the running backs is that Chig is a vertical downfield threat. I mean, he is still a threat to make a big play down the field. And I think
we're not talking like 30. I don't want people to think we're idiots. We're not talking like he's taking 30-yard bombs. We're talking that if you need a 15-yard play, Chig could get you a 15-yard play.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's going to catch the ball 10 yards down the field and turn it upfield for an additional 10 kind of deal.
Yeah.
I don't think that Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard can't be that, but we just haven't really seen it. The way that Spears was utilized last year, we haven't really seen it. And to me, I think that's the differentiator that it would put me in the camp with you that yes, he probably is number 4. If you're just lumping the pass catchers together, I'm putting him there in that 4th spot. Yeah.
And being that he can block, and it makes sense that he maybe is the tight end in these 11 personnels a lot more than what we think. But also having both Chig and Josh Wiley makes me think that I think we're going to see a little bit more 12 personnel usage.
Yeah.
Than maybe what fans expect. I do expect a lot of 11 personnel. But I do think that maybe even down at the goal line in the red zone, but I do think that you're going to see a little bit more 12 personnel than what the Bengals have traditionally used in the past. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good thing because there have been a few seasons where Joe Burrow out of 12 personnel is one of the better guys and one of the better quarterbacks out of that. And I would think that Will Levis could easily take advantage of both Chig and Josh Wiley both being on the field in certain matchups. I think it's become almost like I said, it's swung too far away from Chig.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like I think that everybody's like Josh Wiley. We all need to remember maybe that is the plan. But for the plan finding success does not have a real high rate, to be honest with you. If let's be objective here, we're talking about a guy who was a 5th round pick, who hasn't seen a lot of action, and has a problem with concussions and other injuries. And we got to understand that it may work. That may be the plan, but the chances of success aren't as great as what people make it out to be. It's not not like it's a for sure thing. And I think Tyler Eifert's kind of a perfect example, even though I don't know if Tyler Eifert really crossed paths with the Callahan era. But you talk about a guy that when he's healthy was really good. But the problem is he couldn't stay healthy. And I kind of like this from Josh Domsky, this Wiley's like Tyler Eifert in this offense, in that I could see it, but then I could also see that we grow increasingly frustrated as a fan base and as analysts and all this stuff that he can't stay healthy. Chig, on the other hand, we have seen do it. Like, no matter what, we have seen Chig perform in NFL games in big time moments. And I think we've swung now too far the other way on Chig.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think what we've seen from Wiley is just flashes. And I think when you are projecting him kind of ascending to tight end one, clear tight end one, when I think about it, it's not necessarily a knock on Chig. It's just that maybe this guy can be used in a more traditional tight end role, and maybe that leads him to seeing the field a little more often. I think he's a smooth mover, knack for finding the soft spot against the zone coverage. He's got the size to go up and win at the catch point. I think that adds value in the red zone. And I think he's a guy that's going to throw his shoulder into a block. But you're talking about a guy that the highest snap count he saw in 2023 was 43% of the offensive snaps. And he did it twice in Tampa Bay and in Jacksonville. So any evaluation we're going to make off of Josh Wiley is based on such a small sample size that you can't help but project based off of potential. And I think Josh Wiley has a wealth of potential that if he stays healthy and he reaches that level, I think he's going to be a pretty good, pretty steady tight end in this league. But I still look at him quite a bit differently than I do Chig Okonkwo, because I just think Chig is a better playmaker. I think he's still the guy that you're more likely to get the ball to in space. He's going to make a guy miss. He's going to run through tackles, and he's going to be like dynamite with the ball in his hands. They're two different tight ends, and I think it makes it really interesting to watch how it plays out, how this coaching staff implements both of these guys. But to your question about the personnel groupings, I would also add and direct people to our video on Stacking the Inbox about Bill Callahan's run game in Cleveland and the way he used personnel with Harrison Bryant and David Njoku. And I would look at Josh Wiley and Chig Okonkwo and say, I kind of like this tight end duo. If we're looking on potential and ceiling, I kind of like this duo better than the one he had more. And I think it'll enable this offense to do more things out of 12 personnel. I think it's a bonus in the run game. And I think when you have two guys that are capable of holding their own in a block, but can also, in Wiley's case, like you said, sneak down the seam, I think that's where he's potentially dangerous. And Chig Okonkwo just getting out in space, I think it means you can do multiple things out of the same formations. And that's ultimately when we start cooking with gas as an offense. And that's what has me kind of excited about this tight end room and how the two complement each other. And I've kind of been chewing on this back and forth. This Josh Wiley tight end one take is more about, hey, watch out for Josh Wiley. Don't sleep on Josh Wiley. He can be pretty good this season. But the more I think about it, the more I kind of think, I don't know if this team's going to have a true tight end one, where it's just one guy like Travis Kelce out there getting all the looks and all the snaps and all that. Like, I kind of feel like this is going to be more of a split usage, balanced timeshare between these two guys.
Yeah, I don't think. Here's how I kind of look at it. There's nothing that Josh Wiley can do that Chig can't do. But there are things that Chig can do that Josh Wiley can't do. Okay. I don't know if Josh Wiley, first off, we know Chig can stay healthy. Yes. Second thing is that we don't know Josh Wiley's yak ability hasn't really been, on display. He can get open, he can create mismatches, but the same thing that Chig can do. So it'll be interesting to see, because I do agree with you that it could be a game-by-game basis, matchup base. It could be very Tony Pollard, Tyjae Spears. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like you are at they have another advantage.
Yes.
having Chig as the only tight end on the field and having Josh Wiley as the only tight end on the field does not tip your hand. It does not tip your hand either way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people have kind of jumped so far that like, well, Chig can't block. So obviously if he's on the field that, they're not going to run. Well, they've ran with him on the field the last 2 years. So he can run block. I just think at this point, it kind of looks like that. I think that both these guys, whether it doesn't matter who's on the field, it's like Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears just keep coming back to that. It doesn't matter who's on the field, you're not tipping your hand. And
Yeah.
I think, and you still have mismatches available to you no matter what. And Josh Domsky says 43 catches, 436 yards, and 3 touchdowns in 16 games in 2019 for Tyler Eifert with Brian Callahan. 4 starts. That's what he thinks Wiley is. So I could totally see that. I could see a situation like that. And that's beneficial. Those 3 touchdowns are beneficial. The more touchdown, 3 is better than 0.
Yeah.
The more touchdowns you score, if you score more touchdowns than the other team, you win. And that's good rule of thumb. So
I can
kind of see that. Go ahead.
Well, go ahead, finish your thought, and then because I'm going to separate.
Well, I'm just saying at the point, like, I like the idea of Josh Wiley as tight end 1. I do think that Josh Wiley can bring. I think that he has the chemistry with Will Levis built in. I'm not saying that Chig can't get there or anything, but I do like this idea of Josh Wiley as tight end 1. But I do think that ultimately, I think Chig will probably end up with the most snaps.
Okay. Yeah. I'm curious how you feel about this group of guys that have all this athletic ability, but for whatever reason, like didn't put it together under Mike Vrabel, maybe ended up in his doghouse. Like, we've talked a lot about like Christian Fulton, Treylon Burks, especially. And part of me kind of wonders if Chig was kind of quietly in that group because of how he was utilized in 2023. I don't know if it was a case where, again, this is reckless speculation. This is not reporting based on any information that I have or anything like that. But part of me just wonders if it was a case where, you know what, he drops a pass, Vrabel doesn't want him in the game anymore, and then it's hard for him to kind of get back into a rhythm. Maybe you develop a little bit of the yips, that sort of thing. It just kind of seemed unnatural the way he took that step back after what we saw, the flashes of promise in 2022. So I'm just kind of curious, like if you have any thoughts on that, if maybe there is like I don't want to say the breakout season coming for Chig, but maybe his step back was kind of the byproduct of his surroundings.
Yeah, I look at it a couple of different ways. Maybe the offense didn't suit him. Maybe they weren't utilizing him very well. We've seen Calvin Ridley kind of go through that same thing where they're not really taking advantage of the skill set properly. Let's see here. I was trying to look at let me go to his game logs real quick because I wanted to say that I thought that he wasn't really seeing the snaps you expect.
If I recall, it dwindled down game by game. Like he started out hot, but then
it did. So
yeah.
So look, it started 83, 81. So I did these top to bottom by percentage of offensive snaps played.
Yeah.
On Pro Football Reference. Weeks 1 through, I mean, it's literally goes in the order of the year. I'm not even joking. So
yeah.
Well, no, it doesn't. I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong thing. But I was looking at the wrong thing. But it goes 83, then 69%, 81%, 65%, 58%, 73, 72, 73. And those 73, 72, 73 were some of his more better games as a tight end, I guess you would say. And then 54, 40, 53, 59, 68, 63, 71, 75, and then 56. So, like, there's no consistency to his snap counts.
Yeah.
And that was a real big issue in year 1 with him, is that he wasn't, even though he was clearly the most dynamic tight end that they had on the roster and one of the more dynamic players on that 2022 roster, they refused to use him early in the year. And I agree with you. It's something about his usage just didn't make sense. And sure, maybe it's the drops. But let's be honest here. You don't sit one of your best players. And last year, he's probably your second best dynamic playmaker in the passing game
Yeah.
outside of DeAndre Hopkins. And you're choosing not to use him. And a
Yeah.
tight end can be a really good safety blanket for a rookie quarterback and for any quarterback. And so I kind of think that there is something to what you're saying. And I just think this team, I don't think Mike Vrabel, Todd Downing, and maybe Tim Kelly just don't know what to do with their good players because they wanted to play a certain way.
Yeah.
And so here, I think that maybe there's a chance that Chig is probably not as do or die as what people want to make it out to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would also flip back to his draft class when we were talking about Chig Okonkwo out of Maryland, the prospect. You know, a lot of scouts thought, hey, this is a really dynamic, explosive guy, kind of needs a little refinement, kind of needs a little development. And he showed flashes early. He got action or he saw action in meaningful games. Like he won his way onto the field early. But I think for a guy like that, a guy that is kind of considered still somewhat of a developmental prospect, one of the biggest aspects to his development is getting the reps. And when you're seeing such an ebb and flow in usage like that, it just kind of makes it hard for me to think this is a young guy that can really settle and grow into a role. And I do kind of come back to, I think he pissed somebody off. I think he did something that they didn't really love, and his usage suffered for it.
Yeah, I also look at it in this way is that, we talked about Justin Otten, who he got an offensive coordinator position,
Yes.
an interim head coach because of his work with the Green Bay tight ends. And then last year was the great failed experiment where the running backs coach went to tight ends coach. And listen, Tony Dews, loved Tony Dews as a running backs coach and everything. And I thought that he did a really good job in that role. But the last time he was a tight ends coach was at Pittsburgh, not the Steelers, the school in 2011. And then before that was back at Central Michigan in 2004 and 2005.
Yeah.
So not a really known commodity to being a tight ends coach in the NFL, which I do think you have to be I think tight ends coaches are kind of like offensive line coaches. You have to know every aspect of the game and you have to know it at a high level. And I think that going from, 2022 and gosh, Luke Steckel was the tight ends coach there. And you saw a drop off from that. And then going 2023 to Tony Dews, who's been coaching running backs for a while. I just don't think that was really a smart way of constructing your staff to where it helps a second-year player take that leap.
Yeah.
And now you have Justin Otten, who knows how to coach tight ends, who is known for that, who has had success with taking unknown tight ends or maybe even castaways and turning them into useful tools for Aaron Rodgers and company up in Green Bay. So in my mind, I look at it and I go, I bet Chig comes out and even Josh Wiley comes out and they just understand more about their role as a tight end in the NFL, more of the X's and O's, more of the Y's and what you're doing when you do it, the technique, because I just don't think there's just something about the coaches last year. All the penalties you saw, all the drops you saw, all the miscommunications just seemed like the fundamentals really got away from them. And there was no teaching of technique and how to fix those mistakes. And we've heard it before. There's a difference between yelling and cussing and pointing out a mistake and actually yelling. You could still yell and cuss and point out the mistake, but teaching and correcting and showing how, showing why. There's a big difference in how to handle those situations. So any news about Speaks, I've heard anything. This from Jack Ripper, no, and I don't care to know, I guess, to put it bluntly. No offense to your question. I just don't care about a UFL player that is not going to amount to anything in the NFL. So
To
just
to
where I'm at.
your to your point about the teaching aspect, I would hark back to Okonkwo being considered a product or not a finished product, a guy that needed a little refinement. And let's assume all these things are true. Let's say this is a dynamic, explosive athlete that maybe you have to teach a little more tight end to. What do you think is more effective in seeing that this prospect reaches his potential, yelling and cussing at him, or taking the time to slow down and teach him the proper technique?
Well, in today's NFL, definitely the latter.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
and
maybe,
I think that's the big thing.
yeah, and maybe that unlocks something in Chigakonkwo where we do kind of see him reach his full potential. I think that's the optimist view of where the tight end room is at.
Well, let's just go through a couple of random rapid fire questions to close out the show on the tight ends. Is Nick Vanette for sure? And let me say this. And what I mean by this is that, like, yeah, obviously he's tight end 3, but is there a chance he could be tight end 2? And that is Nick Vanette in terms of snaps.
Solid tight end 3. I think that's where he stays all season. I think.
Does it take an injury for him to move into that tight end 2 spot at the end of the year in terms of snap counts?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think he's a really good, reliable blocker, maybe steal a touchdown or two in the red zone, but I think that's what he was probably brought here to do. I don't expect him to have an impact on the offense and the passing game specifically that Josh Wiley or Chigakonkwo could.
Is this the year that Thomas Odukoya finally gets his All-Pro that fans have been dreaming about for the last 2 years? Because I mean, he's one of those guys that all these fans have fallen in love with, who has done nothing in the NFL.
Yeah, let me get my notes because I wrote down some quotes for you for this, specifically this question on Thomas Odukoya. This is from Jim Wyatt on the Titans website on June 29th, 2023, my birthday last year, June 29th. Tony Dews called him a smart player, said he had a great work ethic. Mike Vrabel called him an unbelievable teammate. Zach, I do not think these are things that you say about difference makers on the offense. Where's the athleticism? Where's the explosive playmaking ability? Your coaches are saying that last year. Listen, Thomas Odukoya is a fun developmental tight end that fits pretty nicely as tight end 4, maybe a practice squad guy that you continue to develop. I don't see any real immediate impact out of the guy in 2023. I think they are set with their top 3 guys, and unless there's an injury, they're going to ride with those 3 guys all season long.
Do you think, is there any UDFA that can threaten to make the team, including Thomas Odukoya, if you want to include him, that can threaten to make the team without an injury occurring? As far as the final 53, can David Martin Robinson, Steve Stylianos, or Thomas Odukoya actually make the final 53 without an injury?
No. And this is where I'm upset that Mike isn't here so we can take our deep dive into David Martin Robinson. He looks like a pretty good athlete and moves well, was making plays out there at OTAs we saw a couple of times, but I just don't know who he pushes out. And that's where, like, they have in Okonkwo, Wiley, and Vanette, they have all the bases covered for your tight end room. So I just don't see it. I think any one of these guys could be practice squad candidates that you can kind of develop and stash for a rainy day. But I don't think anybody's going to claim the spot off of play alone. And Steve Stylianos, listen, it's nothing personal. I'm not trying to hate on the guy. Try to find me a scouting report on Steven Stylianos out there. Like, people weren't even writing about this guy. We're talking about a guy that had 8 catches in 2023, 6 seasons in college football between Iowa and I think it was Lafayette that he transferred from. I can't remember. 6 college seasons. He has a career total 630 yards. This is a guy that all due respect, this is not a knock on him. I make it very clear. When they signed him, I fired up the Iowa tape and I watched one drive and said, yeah, okay, fuck this. I'm not watching this offense for this guy. He is a guy that I think he's a big motherfucker. I mean, he's a big dude. He's got some size. He's got some power as a blocker. To me, I think he's the guy that you might develop into the Nick Vannett replacement, like his ultimate ceiling, land on the practice squad. If something happens to Nick Vannett, maybe he's the guy you call up to come in there on 3rd and short and just plow forward. I think he can be an effective blocker, but I don't see a lot of dynamic aspects to his game. So I think, like I said, Okonkwo, Wiley, Vannett, those are their 3 guys. I think that's going to be their 3 guys unless somebody gets hurt.
Yeah, I don't see any of these guys, any of these undrafted free agent tight ends, which is the whole premise of the show's tight ends today.
Yeah.
I don't think any of these tight ends are going to make it that are undrafted free agents, including future All Pro Thomas Odukoya that all the staffs are sleeping on. As a wonderful talent, great teammate. So at the end of the day, what has to happen for this room to be considered a success? Or in terms of what does this tight end room have to do to make you feel comfortable in 2025 running it back with Chig and Josh Wiley as your main 2 tight ends and whoever's your tight end 3?
You know, I obviously want to see the drop percentage come down a little bit. Give me a 73% catch rate. That's about in line for that class of tight ends in the NFL, just below the elite guys. Give me a 73% catch rate. Give me a drop in the drop percentage. That was phrased horribly. No blown blocks. You know, as complimentary as I've been of Josh Wiley, there were some moments rewatching the Tampa Bay game this morning where it kind of looked like he got out on the edge and didn't really know who to block or where to block, and maybe it's just an issue of looking for work, as they say. Like, if your guy's not there, go find somebody to hit or run a route or get out in space or something. And he was a little hesitant to do that. I've seen similar things with Chig before. Let's cut that down, and let's not blow any blocks. And, you know, from a scoring perspective, if you can give me 7 or 8 touchdowns between the 2 combined, I think that is, you're looking at a pretty good tight end duo if we can hit those marks.
Yeah, I think for Josh Wiley, it's all about staying healthy. I think the production and the value that he brings to the offense just will naturally come. And I think for Chig, it has to be a mental thing. I think Chig needs to see a consistent amount of snaps, a consistent amount of usage, but also reward that consistent usage with being consistent on the field. He has to be relied upon in big situations. He has to be a chain mover. I don't care about the yards after catch per se as much as I want him to be a reliable target for Will Levis. And I think that if you're looking at a duo that as a whole contributes, 750 yards to 1,000 yards and maybe 7 touchdowns between them, that is a successful tight end room for this offense whose focus will be the wide receivers, right?
A lot of mouths.
You got two guys with 750 to 1,000 yards combined and 7 touchdowns, complementing 2 1,000-yard wide receivers, an 800-yard wide receiver, and your running backs. That is a good share of the pie for 2 tight ends. And I look at that and I agree with you. I think a consistently high catch rate is important. So to me, if you get that out of those 2 guys, you're comfortable with going into 2025 with those 2 still under contract, still as your tight end 1, your tight end 2. Josh Domsky says, in his opinion, I don't think there is anything to make me feel comfortable about 2025 is in response to that. Signing or drafting a tight end next year must be a thing. And I would push back on that a little bit in my scenario. If it's maybe Josh Wiley only gets to be healthy for 4 games and Chig Okonkwo only gets 500 yards by himself and maybe 2 touchdowns and his drop rate, all in. I think there is a possibility that is laid out. But I think that for a path of success for 2 tight ends to be still really cheap, and not have to put any draft resources or free agent resources outside of signing maybe another version of Jeff Swaim / Nick Vannett / who was the guy last year me and
Trevon
Mike
Wesco.
got really excited about. Yeah, Trevon Wesco. Those guys. Other than that, I do think that there is a path to success for a combined unit that makes you feel good because of how tight end has been traditionally used over at Cincinnati. We're talking about a team that's basically trotted out Drew Sample for a couple of years as their tight end one. So these guys are both better than Drew Sample.
Yes.
So in my mind, like I look at it that way, is like, if that is the bar for them to keep cheap tight ends because they don't value tight ends in this offense, that's something that we got to remember when judging these tight ends and their production. That's why I kind of gave a big long range of 750 to 1,000 for two players combined, is because we just don't know what the actual usage is going to be. I mean, Tanner Hudson last year led the team. Tanner Hudson, but does anybody even... He's 29, so he's been in the league a while. His name's Tanner Hudson. He had 50 targets for 352 yards. Then you go, Drew Sample had 27 targets for 163 yards. Then it's Irv Smith Jr. Tanner Hudson, Drew Sample, and Irv Smith Jr., the Tennessee Titans have a better tight end room than those three guys.
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, and I think for basically everything that you're looking at for 2024, is that it kind of looks like they're going to go with the same kind of room, right? I mean, they have now Drew Sample. They did draft Tanner McLaughlin in the 6th round. So they have two Tanners, McLaughlin and Hudson. Cam Grandy. They did go out and get Mike Gesicki. And then they drafted Eric All as well. So they did go attack it. But those are resources that they put into a position that they normally don't use that could have been used elsewhere. I mean, a 4th round pick. I like Eric All, but they picked him in the 4th round. That could have been used somewhere else. And will Mike Gesicki actually be anything? I mean,
don't know.
We got to understand that I look at it and I go, I don't know that Will Levis is necessarily going, because Will Levis is behind center, that they'll use a lot of 12 personnel like they made the switch to Jake Browning, like Glory Day Sports, put out there.
Mm-hmm.
When they made the switch to Jake Browning, they used a lot more 12 personnel. And I don't think that I think Will Levis is closer to Joe Burrow in terms of talent than Jake Browning. Not to dismiss Jake Browning, but like Jake Brown, like if Mason Rudolph has to play for a couple of games, I would see the uptick at 12 personnel. I think that's more of a backup stat than anything. So I look at it and I look at these tight ends and I'm like, Tennessee Titans still have the better tight end room of the two. And I think that maybe they've used their draft picks a little bit more. How do I say? I don't think that they've allocated their resources properly in Cincinnati, even trying to find a tight end. Because I'm not a big believer in Mike Gesicki. I like Eric All and Tanner McLaughlin, but man, those are some draft picks that you probably could have used elsewhere because you don't use a lot of tight ends. So I look at Chig and I look at Josh Wiley, and I like both those guys better than anybody that they have on their roster.
I will say this, something that I've kind of come around on, and I've mentioned this when we did our Bill Callahan run game breakdown, and I think I've mentioned it on Football and Other F Words this offseason too, but the personnel that this team has, when you look at the running backs, when you look at the two tight ends they have, you look at the way this offensive line is constructed. We make our jokes about John Ojukwu, and I'm rooting for him for the brand to get that right tackle job, but it's not exactly like he's a proven Pro Bowl caliber player at the spot. But I think the combination of maybe necessity, needing somebody on the right side of the line to help out the tackle, and also the personnel, Chig and Wiley both, their skill sets, to me kind of makes me think you can do some creative things in the passing game out of 12 personnel because of the two tight ends that you have there. And I'm kind of coming around on the idea we may be sleeping on how much 12 personnel Brian Callahan's going to use with this offense because of the pieces that he has in the passing game. Not to say like, and I would also specify, just because I say they're going to run more 12 personnel does not mean that I think they're just going to line up and pound the ball. I think you can do more creative things with these two tight ends in the passing game than people are giving them credit for right now. I think it's something that people are kind of sleeping on, and I think that could lead to an uptick in that personnel usage.
Well, that'll do it for us as our tight end preview. We start on the defense next week because I think we've done everything now. So we'll do starting up on the defense next week. Bluegrass Beverages, our sponsor. You know what? Fuck it. Just drink. Go to Bluegrass Beverages. Just drink. Just get you some alcohol. Have some fun responsibly. Drink responsibly. But just fucking drink responsibly. Have some fun. The weekend is almost here. Go load up and have yourself a Saturday. Get you a little kiddie pool. Put your feet in. If you don't have a pool, put your feet in there. Sit out the back door. Drink a beer. Drink some cocktails. Just go and have some fun this weekend, but do it responsibly. Don't drink and drive. But Bluegrass Beverages, Hendersonville, Tennessee, been around for 50 years. He's Stoney Keeley. You can follow him on X at Twitter at Stoney Keeley, Sobros Network, stackingtheinbox.com. You can follow me on Twitter at FWordsPod. But this has been Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.